What's up, YouTube? So today we are switching things up. We're putting the dragon turtle on hold and we are going to be working on the Taken paint for Wizkids Red Dragon. Now I know they say theirs come pre-primed, but I still prefer to prime it myself. So I have primed this one black. I am also trying out with this some new paints that I got from Army Painter, the Nolzur's Marvelous Pigments. So we are going to be trying that line out with this. And I'm going for something very similar to what my last Red Dragon looked like for this one. Now, both of my local gaming stores are doing it the same way as a take home, paint it, post online. So this first video is going to be the one for the first store. I will be doing a second video with a completely different paint scheme for the other store. So that's just coming down the pipelines. Hoping to do this all in one sitting. So like I said, for this one we're going for very similar but not the same. So let's see here, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 paints out, the additional primer, and 3 washes. Whether or not I use all of them, we'll see. But this is going to be an interesting trial. So I'll be right back with the setup for us to start painting. Okay, we're going to start by laying down our base coat in the red areas, and we are starting with Kobold Red, and we are going to build up from that. So just going to place a little bit of this on the wet palette, and we are going to paint this everywhere that we want red. And just like our red shadow that we used in the Reaper paints, this one's got a very much like red brown tint to it. Now, unlike the Reaper minis that we did, our scale pattern is very much different, so we're going to have to be more aware of where our one particular type of scale ends and the next one begins. We also have very different style horns, and the back is like pure fin all the way going down, so that's going to give a different look to it as well. So we're just going to go and we're going to paint over everything, get a nice clean coat like this, and when I get done with that I'll be back with the next step. Hey YouTube, we're back. So got a nice solid base coat. We're now going to move on to our Cambion Crimson. So this is going to go, once again, everywhere that we're intending to have the red. Now I went ahead and painted the teeth, horns, nails, that Kobold Red, because I kind of wanted them to blend in when I start moving up the horns, whatnot. But moving forward with the rest of these reds, I'm not going to be painting them any of those colors. So we're just going to paint this over and get a nice clean so you kind of see how that's going on nice and good and red. So we're just going to go through and we're going to do this everywhere. And we'll build up from there. So I'll be back with the results from that. Okay, we're ready for our next color, and that is the Dragonfire Red. And we are going to dry brush this everywhere but the wings. The leathery part of the wings, we're actually going to paint this on solidly there, because we're going to brush that up with an even brighter color. So this is Dragonfire Red. Just a little bit more up here. And dry brush. This. Okay. Now as far as painting, I left that Kobold Red on the bottom of the feet. I didn't paint that up any brighter. I felt like that was a good enough shadowy shade to leave by itself. Yeah, it's going to take a while doing this to get it, but this will just brighten up the edges of the scales. Just kind of all I'm going for is just to have those edges pop. And like I said, we'll get the leathery parts solidly this color, and that should make the whole entire interaction pop. So I'm going to do this and I'll come back when this step is done. Okay, on to our next highlight, and this is only going on the wings, none of the other fins, and this is going to be a dry brush of Succubus Red. And not only is it only for the wings, it is only for mainly the outside of the wings. I'm going to do just a little on the inside, but just where the light would truly hit down. So this is not going to add a lot. Most of our coloring is already done. This is just supposed to peek out these topmost points and brighten them up just a bit more. Now I see a spot that got a little bit heavy for my liking. Here. So we will just paint that one little spot in. That should tone it down enough. I think that's enough of the highlight with the Succubus Red as well. Yeah, Succubus Red is very purple. It's almost a fuchsia color. So don't use a lot of it. It will detract from the red. It should be just a quick little boom. So now that we have our entirety of our red, let's move in to our next step, which is going to be painting our chest here. Which for this, I'm going for the creamy colors like I did in previous Dragon, but to help blend it into the reds, I have this one called Stirge Tan, which is kind of a pinkish cream. And my thought is, if I base down with this and build up into the normal creams, it'll actually look more natural. So I'm just going to fill in like this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this nice and full, and then I'll show you the next color and how we're going to build up from there. So I'll be back after that. Okay, so as you can see here, we've got a very pink cream. We are now moving on to Otyugh Brown, which is a more traditional cream color. And we are going to mix this with the Stirge Tan and build that up over this. To try and get closer to kind of the tan. Like pretty much we're wanting to build towards this so that we can use the Otyugh Brown as our final highlight. And have our main color be a variation of this pink cream. And I'm thinking if I can get these two blended together really well, we'll have what looks like a more natural cream transition than doing the Otyugh and getting like highlights and shadows on the Otyugh. So, let's pull this out, and just like before, I'm just going to paint until we have a full clean coverage with the new color. And if I can get the light in here better, let's try to zoom this in. There we go. Y'all can kind of see the transition of the colors already happening. And like this right here is that more traditional cream color. So, I want to go ahead and paint all of this and then I will be back. Okay, so we're back. So we're taking the Otyugh Brown, and this time we're just doing the Otyugh Brown. And we're going to go ahead and highlight just picking out the edges. Now this is going to take a very, very steady hand to do. So be very careful. And pretty much the way I suggest to do this that'll work best is to work one side, then flip it over and go for the other. And if you need something more to support you to keep you from shaking, use like your table surface, pull in real close to yourself to do what you need to do to keep nice, steady hands. Now this scale here is a little bump. So we'll put some highlight on that bump to make that little ridge stand out. And then we'll just keep going down, and anywhere where it's like a nice raised edge, we'll add a little bit of extra detail right there. Now we're moving into and we're just going to keep going like this all the way down. So I'll be back with the next step. Okay, we're back and I have zoomed in so that y'all can see the detail here. So our next step is we are going to add a wash, and we're doing the flesh wash to this. And that's going to create our shadows because we did not use enough different paints to kind of like create shadows as we went. So we're just going to brush the flesh wash all over. And it'll pull into the recesses. Now, washes like this flesh wash, you do not want to use on the actual wet palette, because this will seep straight through the paper and seep into the sponge, and that'll start to tint all future paint jobs that you do. So, I'm going to go ahead and paint all of this, but you kind of see what I'm doing here. Getting everywhere nice and good. And then I'll come back with the next step. Okay, so now that we have completely done the wash in there, all that's left is our extreme highlights, which we're going back to the straight Otyugh Brown, and we are just going to dry brush this straight down the center in the most raised areas, and then I'll just brighten up that part right there. And once we have hit those edges, we're ready to go on to the next step. So I'll be right back once it gets set up for what's next. So our next step now is going to be to paint the inside of the mouth, which I am going to do purple. I have a color here called Purple Worm, and that is going to be a nice like It's a little on the bright side, but it's more or less a mid-tone of purple. I'm just going to paint this in. I'm not worried about detail on the inside of the mouth so much, because something I haven't shown is this mini came with this little fire effect that we're going to paint up that goes inside the mouth. So I'm just looking for there to be some detail underneath that kind of shines through. So I'm just going to make sure we got the purple everywhere. And as soon as we're confident that nowhere was missed, we can move on to the next step. So I'll be back when I've got this with a nice good clean coat. So we're back, and our next step is we are going to take skeleton bone and we are going to start painting in our horns, our teeth, our claws, and just like with our stomach, where that gave a very harsh color at first, this we're going to be hitting up with a wash to really pick out the details. So just get nice clean coverage. So y'all kind of see what's going on. So I'm going to focus on getting this nice and clean, and then I will come back with the next step. So we are back, and our next step is going to be to apply the wash, and we are doing a brown wash for this one, and we're applying it everywhere except for the teeth. And just like before, this is going to pool into the recesses and really just kind of change up the color that we're working with. And so we're just going to keep going with this until we've gotten everywhere nice and good. So I'll be back with the next step. I'm back and we've done all of our washing. So now we're going to go back to our skeleton bone. And we're just going to very lightly touch up all of our claws. I had put the base on it to help it dry. So let's kind of put that off to the side. It's only going to get in the way until we're done. So you're just going to carefully paint it up here. Leaving the shadow behind. It's a little more difficult up top here. You've got more area to paint in. It's not just a simple, here's a line and you're good to go. So I'm going to paint all these and then I'll be back, because doing stuff a little bit differently on the topmost horns. Okay, I'm back. So here's how we're going to handle the actual topmost horns. We're going to go back to doing some dry brushing. Still doing it with the skeleton bone. And we're just doing a very gentle dry brush, going straight back, and we use pretty much all that shaded detail where we want. So now that we did that, we are going to grab our Lawful White, and this is going to go for our extreme details. And while we're doing our extreme details, we are going to also go ahead and whiten the eyes. So for these little horns, we're looking at pretty much the actual tips of the horns. We're looking at the tips of the claws, the tips of the teeth. And we're just going to be very careful doing this, not to get too much. Now, a little word of warning for when you go to do the eyes. The eyes on this miniature are extremely small. So be very careful. Use a brush with a very fine point. And it should work out just fine for you, but if you think you messed it up, just go back, touch it up, fill it back in with the reds, and start over. Now, for these two big claws on the very front parts of the wings, we're going to do a little bit more than the tip. We're going to get that whole front edge. We're just kind of trying to get it where the light is going to highlight it the most, what would be bright naturally. Okay, now for the actual horns, I want a slightly larger brush, not for the point, but I'm going to take the side of the brush, so I wanted something. I'm going to go right across this edge. I got a bit too much right there. So we'll just go in. Kind of tone that back. That dry, and then we can just try doing it again. While I wait for that to dry, I'll go ahead and paint in the eyeballs. Okay. That should be dry enough, so let's try this again. Just a small amount of paint. Brush and just get the actual tip. There we go. That looks right. So now that we have that, I'll get set up for the next step. Just going to be finishing out these eyes. And this is going to be very, very difficult. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So we are going to take green flame, and this is going to be a very bright contrast to the red. We are going to paint these eyeballs in. And then, I'm not sure if I'll be able to do a slit, but we're going to do at least a dot of Abyssal Black to finish the eye out. We're not going to leave any of the white behind. The whole purpose of painting it white was so that the green would not go immediately neutral, because green over red, they're contrast of each other, and we did not want to create a neutral paint. We wanted this to actually appear green. On the miniature. Okay. So we're going to let that dry. Should not take that long. I did not put a lot of paint up there. Go ahead and get our black ready. And we're going to do a nice, yeah, it's going to be a dot. Slit is not going to work here. And there we go. Oh, to be the same size now. Okay. So this part of the miniature is done. Now I'm going to go back, make sure I don't see anywhere that needs touch-up works, but we're going to go ahead and seal this up, and then we can start working on both the base and the fireball. So I will be back. I'm not sure which one of these two I'm going to tackle first. Kind of leaning more towards the base, but then after we do that, we will go on to the next step. So yeah, I have decided we're going to go ahead and do the base first. I went ahead and glued the scenic base to the regular base, and we're going to go ahead and use the gray primer to get this whole thing primed. And we want to be very careful because I do not want to get any of the actual flying stand, which is why I'm brushing primer on as opposed to using the spray primer that I generally prefer to use. So just keep going around, making sure you hit every little nook and cranny. I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be back. Okay, we're back, and we're going to start. Oh goodness, I did not have that on good enough. I'll pick it up in a little bit. So we're going to start with rigid leather here for our first coat. I'm just going to be getting generous, get it everywhere. And just like before with the primer, be careful around the actual flying stand part. And we're just going to paint this everywhere and get a nice solid covering. So I want to start with a raised surface first, and then I'll go around the edge and fill in. But that's pretty much all there is to it for this one. So I'll fill this in completely, and then we'll be back with the next step. So we've got a nice solid coat up here, and now we're going to go to the next color, which is our Owlbear Brown. And this one we are just going to dry brush up there. So and we're just going to go all around like this, getting everywhere we can. Once again, be very careful of the actual flight stand. Then our next is to dry brush it one more time with the Minotaur Hide. Put too much still on the brush. just going to go all around, get the highest detail here. That looks pretty good. Now, what's this spot I need to touch up? Okay, that brush seriously needs to be cleaned. So we'll do a touch up with this one. Okay. Now, we're going to go with a combination of the shadow wash and the brown wash to pick out the last of our details. I'm going to start with the brown wash that we used earlier, and then anywhere that still needs a darker detail after that, we'll get the black wash. So I'm just going to keep applying this all the way around, and I'll be back when I'm done with that. Okay, it's going to take the base a little while to dry there, so while we're waiting for that to dry, we're going to go ahead and start on this fire. So going back to that Fire Red, not Fire Red, Dragonfire Red, we're going to pull it out to glaze consistencies, and we are just going to lightly apply this all over. We want to keep the transparency of this. And all we're trying to do is just lightly tint it this red color. Anywhere where it's going on a little too heavy, you can just come in, add some clean water to it. And then just kind of like dry it down. So, just be very, very careful with this. Now I'm also looking at where I'm set up for this. I need more room to pull this, so I'm going to start a new section of the red right here. And so we're just going to go all around like this, tint it up, and I'll be back with next step. Okay, so while we're still waiting for the base to dry, our next step on this flame is we are going to dry brush some detail into it, and we are going to start with Rust Monster. Now, I'm hoping to get away with as little paint as possible for this, because this really shouldn't take that much to add some good detail to this. So you can see we're starting to get some variety of color in this. While still keeping the transparency. And so now we're going to move on to our last stage of highlighting on this, and this is going to be Firenewt Orange. This is a very yellowy orange. I'm just going to try to use just barely any paint. And we're just going to dry brush this on. Focusing more at the end than anywhere else. And that looks good to me. So we'll go ahead and put this to the side. Be ready to seal it up. I'm not going to go to seal this until I'm ready to seal the base as well. I'm going to just go ahead and seal them at the same time, and then we'll glue the whole thing together. And the base should be pretty much finished drying from those washes, so I'll check that, and then we'll go into final detail work for the base. Okay, so while we're still waiting for the base to dry, our next step on this flame is we are going to dry brush some detail into it, and we are going to start with Rust Monster. Now, I'm hoping to get away with as little paint as possible for this, because this really shouldn't take that much to add some good detail to this. As you can see, we're starting to get some variety of color in this. While still keeping the transparency. So now we're going to move on to our last stage of highlighting on this, and this is going to be Firenewt Orange. This is a very yellowy orange. Once again, I'm going to try to use just barely any paint. And we're just going to dry brush this on. Focusing more at the end than anywhere else. And that looks good to me. So we'll go ahead and put this to the side. Be ready to seal it up. I'm not going to go to seal this until I'm ready to seal the base as well. I want to just go ahead and seal them at the same time, and then we'll glue the whole thing together. And the base should be pretty much finished drying from those washes, so I'll check that, and then we'll go into final detail work for the base. Okay, we're back. So we just need to add our extreme highlights to this. So we're going back to the Minotaur Hide. And we're just going to carefully dry brush this in. On our highest areas. And that looks like it added plenty of variety to our colors. So we'll let that dry. We'll seal this. We'll seal our fire. And then we'll glue everything together and do our last bit of work for covering the base. So, be back in a bit. So this is our last step here. We are going to paint on some PVA glue, also commonly known as white glue. And then we are going to apply some static grass. So everywhere that isn't the actual base itself, I'm wanting to get some static grass, and then in some of the raised areas of the base I want to put some static grass, but not everywhere up top. So we're just going to spread this . Now let's get some right there. That looks like a good spot. We'll actually spread it to be more like that. little tough right there. It's got a nice little bit right there. This whole hilly area right here. And let's go with right there under the tail. So those are all the places I'm looking at having the static grass. Now, I don't have the best means of applying static grass right now, so I am just going to kind of sprinkle it on. There are better ways to do this that makes the static grass look better, but currently I don't have that available to me, and usually I would prefer to dip the base inside, but that is also not an option this time because this base is quite a bit larger than what I'm used to working with. So, kind of what you want to have static grass do is stand up. And like I said, I don't have the means for that right now. So I'm hoping to just kind of bang my excess off and then try to use gravity to get to stand a bit better. But I do have some things I'm getting that'll make this work better. So we got some areas that didn't get covered as heavy that I can cover it a bit more. So just take the excess, kind of sprinkle it up there. And then once again, just remove what is too much. And just kind of go back and forth until you get a nice, good coating of it. And so hopefully next time I show a video off, I have a better means of doing this. But for right now, that's all I've got. So let's get this little stacks grass situation cleaned up. Because all this excess I will put back into the bottle, container, whatever you want to call it. And then I'll give you all a nice, good look at the dragon itself. So here is the finished red dragon. Hope everyone has enjoyed. I will put in the description a complete list of paints, and we'll be back later.